We have all heard how fate toys with people who believe they command it. They sit upon their thrones, wrapped in silk, their words shaping the course of empires. They raise their hands and people kneel. They give orders and lives are changed forever, but in the end, what are they? They're just mere humans, just like you and I. Fate does not forgive. It does not turn back. It watches us in silence. As people carve their own ruin, it strikes. Some like to call it justice, while others call it misfortune. But I have come to understand that fate is neither kind nor cruel. It's just simply what must be. Nothing can save you from what you're destined for. Good or bad, you will have to face it. His name carried both fear and power. His word was law. He did not just rule, he commanded. His presence alone was enough to silence a room. It was the year 1426. Sultan Siri Radhaveera Maharudung, or simply just Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu, ruled the Maldives with an iron fist. Side note, just to give you some context before we move on, it's tradition for those who performed Hajj to be given the title Haji before their names. Interestingly, in some of the old Maldivian texts, Hadi was sometimes written as Hadi. Now, here's a little folklore about Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu. According to the folklore, those who disapproved of Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu's actions deliberately shortened the Ha in Hadi to Ha, and then they swapped the Jeem with a Dal, referring to him as Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu. But historical records tell a different story. Hadi appeared in texts even before Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu's time. So, according to a lot of historians, the shift from Hadi to Hadi was likely due to the old Avela script, which did not have the letter Jeem and used Dal instead of Jeem. One fine day, the Sultan called upon the noblemen, the scholars, and the highest officials of the land. They gathered in the grand hall, standing in silence as they awaited his words. Then, with the certainty of a man who feared nothing, he made his announcement. He would leave the kingdom, not for war, not for conquest, but for something far greater in the eyes of his faith. He would journey to the sacred island of Mecca. He wanted to perform Hajj. The Sultan had been their ruler for as long as many could remember at that point. He was the one who held the kingdom together, and without him, they didn't know what would become of the Maldives. Who would guide the people, and most importantly, who would guard the throne, they thought. Then, as if he had already anticipated their fears, he gave them his answer. The crown would not be left without a head to bear it. His young son would take his place sitting upon the throne until the day of his return. In his final preparations, the Sultan ordered the construction of a mighty warship on the northern side of Malé. Skilled boat builders from the northern islands were brought in to build it, and once their work was done, they were sent away. The ship stood strong, waiting for its journey, and on an auspicious day, it was launched into the waters. Crewmen were chosen, and the ship was stocked with food, water, and supplies. And then, on another sacred day, the Sultan set sail. But fate had other plans. When he arrived in Mecca, he learned that he had missed that year's Hajj. Realizing he would have to return the following year, he decided to stay in Mecca. A quiet shift began in Malé. An Arab named Sayyid Mohamed, a man of high rank, perhaps the Chief of Justice at that point, he saw an opportunity. With the respect and trust given to Arab travelers back then, he seized the throne. The transition was seamless. There was no rebellion, no bloodshed. Power changed hands without a single protest. In Makkah, far from the shores of Maldives, Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu was a man fascinated by a new world. He watched the Bedouis and admired their fearless raids on wealthy travelers. They struck fast, taking goods, and they allegedly even killed and ate their victims. Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu was so captivated by this. These wild, fearless warriors living outside the confines of tradition ignited a curiosity in Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu. He found himself fascinated by the way they live life, their power and their freedom. It was a stark contrast to his own world of kings and laws, and he couldn't help but wonder if there was more to be found in this untamed existence. When the next Hajj season arrived, Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu finally completed his Hajj, but one was not enough. He paid for the blessings of 70 more people, and with the rest of his wealth, he bought 70 slaves and prepared to return home. Back in the Maldives, Sayyid Muhammad had made himself comfortable on the throne. His rule unchallenged, his power unopposed. The people, accustomed to a quiet reign, had settled into their new way of life under his command. The arrival of Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu's ship did not shatter the calm. There was no battle at all. The people did not rise up, nor did they protest. The change was as quiet as the winds before a storm. Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu, returning from his journey with wealth and power, reclaimed what had always been his. The throne was his once more, as if the kingdom had merely paused in his absence. Upon reclaiming his throne, the Sultan made a bold decision. He replaced all of his Maldivian slaves with newly acquired ones from Saudi Arabia. His act angered the people of Mali. To accommodate the new slaves, the Sultan ordered the construction of a grand house between the palace and the mosque to the west of the 3 mosques built by Sultan Dharmawanta. Today, it is where the president's office stands. As Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu's reign continued, a new influence swept across the Maldives. The Shirazi Persians, known for their travels, were gaining prominence. Among them was Al-Ghazi Hasan Shirazi, a man of wisdom and power. Seeing potential in him, Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu and his officials made a decision to appoint him as the Chief Justice of the Maldives. As the monsoon winds swept through the Maldives, it was customary for trading vessels to set sail for Bengal. Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu, in his ever-demanding manner, ordered one of his ships to be floated out. But the youth of Mali, already frustrated with the growing discontent over the treatment of slaves, resented being called upon to do the work. A comment was made by one of the youth, voicing the frustration that had been building for some time now. He said, if the slaves were to be fed and treated well, then they should be the ones doing the labor, not the people of Mali. The slaves overheard these words, and what had been a simmering tension suddenly erupted into an open rebelliousness. An argument broke out between the slaves and the youth. Voices were raised in anger. Accusations were thrown like weapons. The time came to float out the ship. The tension that had been building for days finally snapped. In an act of cold revenge, the slaves who had been pushed to the edge took matters into their own hands. Without hesitation, the slaves placed the youth beneath the ship as it was about to be floated out to the sea. As the massive vessel began to move, the weight of it pressed down, and in one brutal, unforgiving motion, the youth was crushed. The sound of his body crushing under the ship's weight was the sound of something far darker, a new chapter of hate, violence, and revenge that would ripple through the kingdom, leaving its mark for generations to come. The news of this horrific event spread quickly across the island, from the youngest children to the oldest elders. It didn't take long for the Chief Justice Hassan Shirazi to hear of this tragedy. Hassan Shirazi was furious. He confronted the Sultan, demanding that the slaves be punished for their actions. The Sultan was dismissive, calling it an unfortunate incident. What had happened in his eyes was simply a matter of fate. There was no need for retribution, no need to hold anyone accountable. The death of the youth had been a natural consequence, a force beyond anyone's control. The Chief Justice, firm in his stance, warned the king that if no action was taken, the slaves would grow bolder, intimidating the people of Malé. He reminded the Sultan that it was his decision to bring the slaves to the island, and now he was responsible for their actions. Hassan Shirazi warned that allowing such a grave injustice to go unpunished would invite divine retribution. The Sultan, boiling with anger at being challenged, ordered the 70 slaves to carry out a gruesome act of cruelty. They were to wrap the judge in cotton, soak him in oil, and set him alight. Without any hesitations, the slaves obeyed. And as the flames consumed him, Hassan Shirazi, in his final moments, recited prayers, but his words were drowned out by the fire and his pleas for mercy were unheard. A scholar from Medina, Al-Faqih Sulaiman al-Madani, also condemned the Sultan's actions. He attempted to reason with the Sultan, but the Sultan did not listen. His efforts were in vain. Not long after the brutal death of Hassan Shirazi, a mysterious illness began to take hold of Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu. His body, once strong and commanding, now radiated an unbearable heat. No amount of shade, no amount of breeze, or no amount of water could provide relief. Even when the palace servants drenched him in wet clothes and poured water all over his burning skin, it did not work. It was as if the very essence of his being had turned into fire, and the suffering grew unbearable with each passing second. His body, once imposing and strong, became a prison for him. He had no way to escape it. Every single breath he took seemed to stoke the flames within. He fought against it, but it was clear that the fate had turned its unforgiving hand. Eventually, his resistance crumbled. The fire within him consumed him, and with a final unsteady breath, he surrendered to the pain. His life slipped away in agonizing defeat. But even death could not free him from the curse that had taken root within his soul. When his body was prepared for burial, the heat still clung on to him, seeping through his lifeless form. Each time his body was placed in a wooden casket, it would catch fire, and the flames, it refused to let go of him even in his death. After endless trials with caskets that could not contain the relentless heat, a final solution was found: a casket made out of stone. The fire that had consumed him in his life continued to burn in death. The people of the Maldives were left to wonder if this was indeed the reckoning of a ruler who had ruled with an iron fist, blind to the consequences of his own actions. It was a reminder that no power, no wealth, and no title could protect one from the unforgiving hands of retribution. After Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu's death, the slaves were given the opportunity to relocate to an island of their choosing. They selected a small yet beautiful island in Miladumadulu atoll. When an official was sent to inspect the island, he described it as a Kuda Fari island, which means a small but beautiful island. And so, the island was named Kudafari. According to historians, the people living in Nuno Atoll Kudafari today are believed to be the descendants of those very slaves. If I have learned anything from the story of Hadhi Hassan Rasgefaanu, it is that fate and actions are connected. The Sultan, I remember, he said that the youth's death was just fate. So, was his own downfall just fate, or was it because of his own choices in life? I believe fate definitely may set the stage, but I also feel like our actions decide how it plays out. Don't you think so? Let me know what you think. I'm interested to know. Alright, folks, that's it for this episode. Until we are able to unfold another tale beyond the sunny side, this is me, Tata, signing off. Stay safe and bye-bye.